Out of the street corners they scream. You knew it was coming. You've been waiting for this for months. Rumour hardened into fear and now they scream at you. The sirens, their hysterical wail tearing through the white noise of the city. And you run. You run to pick up those things that can never be replaced. A picture of them in the days when they still loved you. Your mother's wedding ring. And then you turn to your shelf of games. You only have room for 5. 5 games for Doomsday. 5 Games for Doomsday is a show in which board game personalities are thrust into a cabin in the woods to outrun an oncoming disaster, but can only take 5 of their games with them. But which will they choose?
My guest this week has eschewed indie cred for a spot in the limelight. Designer of Spires, Xenon, Profiteer and Viva Java, he came to prominence in the hobby game world with the outrageously successful My Father's Work and has had the good sense to hire me to do the voices for the app. On top of that, he's a former croupier and co-hosts the State of Games podcast and has the dubious distinction of being the first game designer I ever interviewed. My guest this week is TC Petty III. TC, welcome to the cabin.
Thanks for having me. This is a great opportunity for me. Where am I?
Somewhere in the wilderness at completely under my control.
Thank God. All right. Well, at least as long as I'm here, I might as well keep talking. Move the gag out of my mouth.
So, this is a family show. the family out of those Rob Zombie movies. Anyway, so my first question is, how difficult was it for you to pick the games to take to the cabin?
I was kind of doing the thing. Maybe other people do this, but I was kind of doing the thing where I'm like, I need to look like a well-rounded person. Like, oh, look at this. Like, he does this and this and this and this. And then I just kind of dropped it and was like, I'll pick 5 that at least hit things that I like, as opposed to worrying about, like, will I make everybody happy with these? Nope. I'll just make weird indie picks and just go from there.
I mean, I've seen your list. I mean, not entirely indie, but nevertheless,
indie picks. Just I'll just make my own picks and just who cares where they fall.
And
so this was just super easy.
And giving nothing away, but your picks are quite diverse. I mean, what kind of gamer are you? Where's your happy place?
I think usually, like, my happy place is the ridiculously heavy Euro games now. If there's anything that somebody says to me, like, hey, if they say, oh, European town, I go, yes. So if they just, but that's not even really ridiculous. But if someone said, Lisboa, let's play Lisboa, I'd be like, yes, please. And I think it's just because I've had I've been so, I've had so much work that it's like, I just want a space that I can fully inhabit, not having to, like, sacrifice any of my intellect. I just want to spend an hour learning the rules and then be in that world for 3 hours. That's me right now. And maybe that'll change. I also like little short card games with numbers.
And so, people rail, and I'm constantly surprised by this. People rail at this game is fully beige. It has a grim European man on the cover, and it's all cubes. And when I hear that, I think, wow, you've just explained to me the finest game that I can imagine playing. Is that the same with you?
I think, I mean, sure. Yes.
And I mean, is this surprising? Have you? So I, as a gamer, have gone through many phases of playing different types of games, and then I landed on sort of medium weight Euros as opposed to really heavy ones, and thought, yes, this is where I should live. I mean, have you gone through those phases yourself, or were you just sort of instantly drawn to these kind of heavy Euro games?
No, yeah, it's not been one of those things where I just immediately went there. I feel like anytime I try to explain board games to people who've never played any of these things, it's like, I always say, yeah, that one that's big on the shelf, we're just going to leave that off to the side. Maybe in 5 years you will be like, I crave this. But Yeah, and I think these games are specific for a very specific audience, and unfortunately, I don't think that audience is going to just like explode or become the new thing. So I don't know. Over years, it's like I love playing all these different games, but like over the years, it's just kind of been that thing where I just go, okay, I want to do this for me. And if I'm going to pick something for me, I want to have that opaqueness. I want to not know what I'm supposed to do and then push through that. And eventually by the end, have like an idea as to what I'm doing.
Me and Steve, who's also on this podcast, we've developed this theory of the golden age of board games and the silver age of board games, and I'm very much of the view that we live in the silver age. And I think what characterizes the silver age is that Eurogames especially have become unwieldy and less elegant than they once were, and the word I would use to sum up the sort of silver age of gaming is extraneous. I mean, to what degree am I wrong? Do you think these modern Eurogames have extraneous things, or are they as beautifully designed as your 90s, early 2000s Knizia games?
Well, see, that's the thing. Okay, so now let's get into like pretentious game designery stuff. I think a lot of times, sorry if that's a little beep there, but I think a lot of times people use Euro as a class. It's almost like its own little class. And I feel like Euro has come to represent more connoisseur, advanced, complex games. And German-style games was what was being used in the late 90s and early 2000s. And I feel like these are two classes of games. Mm-hmm. One is the clean German design where you have like Leo Colavani just saying, hey, you are three people. There is going to be like, this is going to be a really clean system where you have interacting managerial things on a collaborative board, and you're going to build up that game. And there's going to be Kingmaker moments. Every one of Leo Colavani's games has Kingmaker moments because he doesn't build in any other systems. It's very clean, elegant, but it always has that problem. And whereas you go to something like nowadays where you've got like Alexander Pfister or what's his name, Lisboa guy, Vital Lacerda, where you're kind of just taking 10 different systems, putting them into one and saying game. And you'll find that with one of the things I do like about Vital Lacerda's designs is the fact that you place a piece and do one of four things at most, and then that creates this like ridiculous checklist of things that you have to do on your turn. But it starts from a very simple spot of like, there are four options. Now it's just nuts. Within two turns, it's just mind-numbingly complex. But I think but I think those are more Euro. I think German style games are the ones that like the 45 to 60 minute power games, and then family games kind of exist in the dredge, like the oily terribleness that is just everything that board games have to offer. I would hate. Maybe I'll make a family game, but man, I just hate that. I hate the word family game.
So let's go to the beginning then. So where did you grow up, and what effect did that have on the person you are today, do you think?
Well, I grew up in Pennsylvania and central Pennsylvania, and I never really left up until 4 years ago when I moved down to North Carolina, and through college I went to West Virginia University. And why did I go to West Virginia University when I lived in central Pennsylvania? Just because I did the thing that everybody should not do. So don't do what I do, kids. Do not follow a lover to a place in the middle of nowhere and then call it a day, because you're not going to get the education. My West Virginia education was about as good as my West Virginia education could potentially be. And that is not a slight on West Virginia. It just happens to be like 48th in education out of 50 states, something like that. So yeah, don't follow my thing. But anyway, I think what this whole like Appalachian American thing has done for me is kind of given me a way to be. I can't really be cool. I don't think there's really a way I can. So my background has been suburbia and the woods. And that's really just going to be like cute and kitschy. And so I've been able to do literally anything that I want to do. Also being white. I think that helps too. I get to do whatever I want and no one says anything. I'm a white male. This is great. So yeah, I've been, you could see that in a lot of this just game designs too. I just do whatever I want because I don't have to worry about being judged for it. Does that make sense?
And so when did games enter your life then? Did you play them as a child, or was this a sort of later addition?
Oh, I hated board games when I was a kid. It's like I would play them, but like only out of duress, or if someone else was like, we need to play this. So I remember I remember playing Risk with my friends one time and just being like, this, I cannot stand this. I remember playing Monopoly as a kid, and the only time I ever had fun was whenever we played as fast as possible. So we played like a game of 2-player Monopoly in like 20 minutes and just as fast as possible, just rolling over each other. That was the best. Speed Monopoly, the best. Otherwise, I thought board games were kind of like if you took video games and the concept of a game that was in a video game and then just erased all the fun. It's like everything's random. The game's always happening to you. You never have any agency. That's what I thought board games were. Just roll dice, see where you land, and see what happens to you. Cool, that's great. But when I was older and I started to play, somebody pulled out a box that looks like a 7th grade textbook from like the 80s. And I was like, oh, it's brown. It looks terrible. This is going to be the worst thing ever. And it was amazing, which was Settlers of Catan, I guess. Yeah. Then I never looked back. That was like the epiphany moment. Oh, wow. You can actually make decisions in board games? That's crazy.
So for me, it was Pandemic. And when I played Pandemic, I was just bitten by the bug. And within a couple of months, I had a collection and I was going crazy over the whole thing and spending hours watching YouTube videos on games. I mean, was this the same for you?
Well, how did I beat you on this? I guess I got into it a few years before that, so there wasn't really that option. So I had to, at the time, the most popular game was Puerto Rico. So and YouTube, I really wasn't watching YouTube videos. I think it was like 2003, right? Something like that. So like YouTube was around? Question mark? I don't know. At this point, it's almost like YouTube's like antique. There's antique stuff there. Yeah. So I only had Board Game Geek to work off, which I guess is fine though at the time. And so, I just looked at the top games and went, ooh, what is this? And then I would play most of them and be like, this is exactly what I remembered. Like, this is a terrible game. Like, I'm glad I skipped Twilight Imperium and stuff, like, because all that Ameritrash stuff would not have appealed to me at all. Cause it's all about like I for a while I had a rule where if it wasn't as good as a video game, what was the point in playing it? So when I played all the, the German games, the Euro games, yeah, they were better than video games because they actually had active like competition and you had to watch what someone else was doing. And that actually affected what you were doing on your turn. And I was like, that's pretty interesting. It's like, I'm not just collaboratively working with someone through a dungeon crawl or something. Not that, and also, and that's also like what's that game? Descent. Hated Descent, and it's because I played RPGs when I was growing up, and why would I play a game where I can't actually role play as an RPG? Like, I just found it to be like completely worthless to me as a player. If that makes sense. The artistic worth of Descent was 0% for me. And Yeah, so that just goes to the things that I like, and probably what you'll see on the list. Like, I like things that are clean, but I like things that are complex and complicated, and I like things where I get to play act, or at least tell a story, or get involved in a narrative. So, not really rolling dice and seeing what happens is not really my thing.
So you went on, like me, you became a croupier in a casino. What did you love and hate about that job?
I loved. Oh, so I hated the people. The people were the worst part of that job, and that's mainly because people who are gamblers, they have problems, and that's the reason why they're there. So when someone was reasonable, they were just there to have a good time on a weekend, and you could talk and have a good time. Those are the best times. But anytime you had to deal with regulars, just. I know you're not going to tip. Just don't say anything. Don't look at me. Don't do anything. Just continue to exist here for a while, whatever, until you like collapse into a pile of goo in your chair. But what I loved was the act of doing it, running, like, especially, like, I didn't really like doing blackjack. I did blackjack and poker and all the other stuff, but I did love poker. And I loved whenever people would take risks. I could see what they were doing, follow the action. Whenever I could police the table and make sure that somebody doesn't do something stupid. When I could like anticipate, like one of the things that people would do. Did you do poker or did you just do?
Very rarely. I was blackjack games? And roulette.
Okay, yeah. So you didn't get a chance to do the thing where you go like, "Sir," and pause them and stop them from doing the stupid thing that they're about to do. Whereas poker, you get a little bit more leeway. You can just be like, please stop doing that. Now you. But it was great because there's those moments. One of the things that people like to do, and this we'll do a poker story, but one of the things I would get probably every other day was someone would be heads up with someone else. So you have your two cards, you've gotten to the river, there is nothing left. They have bet, and they bet big, and they look at the other person, right? And the other person's trying to think of what they want, right? What they want to do. And in this case, one of the two things happens. Either the person, usually it's the person that's calling, that is up to maybe call. They'll look at the other person and they'll flip up one of their two cards to try to get a reaction from the other person. Now, this isn't illegal, but what ends up happening is chaos, right? So if I see someone is about to do that, like I learned very quickly, I'd be like, do not do that. I could just get in the way. But if they flipped over, I would immediately stop the other person from flipping their cards because that's what happens, right? Because they think, oh, they're flipping a card, they've called. Then that person says, no, I did not call. I was just showing you that card. Now I know that you have the hand. I'm out. I'm folding, right? And then we have to get somebody over, have to call the floor over, and that happened all the time. So I love being able to be like, no, stop. You're an idiot.
And I was always surprised when I worked at casinos. I think you're exactly right. I used to enjoy the weekend warriors because they were there just to have a few drinks, play a bit of blackjack and have a laugh and spend their 50 quid. And if they lost it, all to the good. If they won, all to the good. And it was always the 3 o'clock in the morning with the guy who's there every night and he just sits there tapping the blackjack table endlessly. And that seems, and will win 10 grand and then be 500 quid in the hole by the end of the night. And I always felt I was always on the side of the gambler, not the side of the house, which didn't make me particularly popular. I wouldn't do anything, of course, but it made me not particularly popular amongst my peers. But do you think casinos are exploitative? And is that a problem?
Yes, they are. Is it a problem? Yes. Also, I'll take a fatalist attitude on this. I feel like the people who are most prone, and this is not all cases, and that's why I have to be a little more reserved about it. But like, I feel like I have a very fatalist opinion about the human race, in the sense that I feel like 2/3 of the human race, we could Thanos snap them away and we would be in a better spot tomorrow. So because of that, I understand that like there are some people who are very smart and are also susceptible to these kind of vices. So for those, totally understand, exception. But 99% of these people are just I'd rather we could corral them into a casino that they were just like, it's sort of like a jail. You just put everyone in there that wants to actually do this for the rest of their life. And it's inconsequential. They can just be there. They're entertained or angry or whatever they want to be. And they just stay there, and that's fine. So I understand, but I understand it is a problem, but also it's a problem for the people that I have the least interest in solving the problem for. So yeah, there you go. Fatalist, completely terrible attitude. But at the same time, yeah, realistically speaking, I think it's a problem, but it's not really a problem. And I think honestly, the people that really do enjoy it and do enjoy it for the competitive nature of it, with poker, for example, those tournaments are just super fun to be around. And I wouldn't want to take that away from people.
So your first game then is one of these big, heavy Euro games from a designer you've already mentioned. This is Great Western Trail. What do you admire about Alexander Pfister as a designer?
Well, I think he does a thing that other designers don't necessarily do in that space. He finds a fun thing and then builds off of the fun thing. I think we were talking about Vital Lacerda just for a second, and I said, like, it's interesting because he has, like, some simple mechanisms that build off into other things. One of the downsides to a Vital Lacerda style game is that part isn't very fun. Yeah, it's never, like, the initial placement phase or anything that you're doing is not really fun to me. I don't know of any Vital Lacerda game where that part is fun. It's the stuff that branches out that's fun. Whereas something like Great Western Trail, it's just a really solid game idea to begin with, right? I love the idea of, here is a pathway, and as you are playing the game, you're going to build things along that pathway that help you, and other players are doing it as well, getting in your way. So you're gonna be going from building to building, trying to build up a combo that then later you're going to go back through again. And so it's like this rondel that you build with all kinds of interactive qualities to it. And I think that is just, I love Great Western Trail. And that if that is, I don't think there needs to be any other explanation than that road mechanic of playing basically Oregon Trail, but you get to make up the spaces and you repeat that a few times during the game. That sells it to me. And I can sell, like, to me, like Great Western Trail can be sold just based on that mechanic alone. And then there's other stuff. So he builds off this fun base. It's legit fun. And then goes off in other directions. Do I think his other games necessarily hit that level of, like, initial fun and then expanding? No, I played Maracaibo. I don't think Maracaibo has a fun mechanic to build off of. It's very, I don't even remember. It was like a ship. You move your ships in a circle, and it's kind of like Great Western Trail, but not as fun. And then, but it's got like a story, I guess. But the other thing about Alexander Pfister is he also does like Oh My Goods, which is, like, again, a very, like, fun little game. I really enjoy it. I don't think it's as robust, but, like, that baseline is just really fun. And having a sort of, like, press your luck mechanic. So good. Yeah.
So I think what's fascinating is you've talked about Pfister and Lacerda, and the big difference, the reason why I prefer Lacerda to Pfister as a designer is that Lacerda, as you've said, the initial choices are very simple. It's just the ramifications of those choices are very complex. And what that suggests to me is the game is somehow more developed, more finished, whereas Pfister's games always feel to me between sort of 80 and 90% done. And that sort of final, user interface where the user interfaces with the game hasn't really been worked on, and so it feels that there's so many choices and there's no sort of real way into the game. Am I wrong on this?
Yes.
I demand an explanation.
Yeah, no explanation given. I don't know if. See, here's the thing, right? I've played Escape Plan from Vital Lacerda, and that does not feel like a Vital Lacerda game in general, but it feels like the thing you're talking about being applied to Pfister that is now being applied to Vital Lacerda designs. Like that game has 30 different things you can do on a turn from this menu of options, and that menu is interesting and sandboxy for sure, but there are clearly better options than others. And so you are constantly just checking things off of a list, and then proximity and all this other stuff. I don't necessarily feel that one so if I were to compare, I would say if that's where the Pfister is for you, that is where Vital Lacerda is the downside for me. It's that one doesn't feel fully done. Whereas I can understand that from a standpoint for Mombasa, for example, because I like Mombasa, but I liked it better when I played it wrong. And when I played it wrong it has a cool mechanic where you have a hand, you have, oh God, I'm not going to get into it. But basically, whenever you play cards, they cycle back to you, and you can pick up a certain pile of cards based on what you have placed in certain piles during the game. And so they just cycle. What I did accidentally was play a game where if you discarded, you could pick up that same pile on the next turn. You didn't have to wait a turn. And it felt very intuitive, very straightforward. And then when I learned that the rule was actually this other thing that obfuscates that makes it technically less spammy, but not as good. I haven't really picked up Mombasa since the last time I played it, So I can understand it. It's a little bit clunky there, but at the same time, it's I don't know. I don't like every Pfister, and I don't like every Lacerda.
So why have you chosen Great Western Trail then? Is it because it has that central core of fun? And do you think it's his best game?
Oh yeah, I do. Other than I have not gotten a chance to play some of the other ones, what's
Boone Lake?
Yeah, Boone Lake. On Mars. Isn't On Mars? Who's On Mars?
On Mars is Lacerda.
Lacerda. Jeez, they're all in the same pile. Why are they in the same pile? They're the same designer. I'm calling him out. I've never seen them in the same room together. So
that's true. Neither have I.
So they're probably the same designer. I would say and I don't know why I'm just focused on these two people. I mean, you've got the Steffenfeld, and you've got the other people, whatever, the Uwe Rosenbergs, and I tend to like almost everything that Uwe Rosenberg does. So it's weird that I don't have him on the list of things that I would pick. But I think the Great Western Trail, for example, that layer of fun, there's something about, I like rondels, but I like it whenever there's a thematic connection that I can make sense of. And when I'm just playing, I always wanted Oregon Trail to play like Oregon Trail, but be an actual game. And Oregon Trail is just not a game to me. It's an activity. And this makes Oregon Trail into an actual game. And I'm playing it with other people, and it matters where I place things and how I interact. I love going down that trail and building up things. And every game, you've got these just tile options that you can build different, in different formations, different places each game. I've never really come away from it with a fully formed strategy that I'll implement, like a Sulkin, where I would dream about it and think about what my first move would be. And I think that's because this has some of that interaction. But there's also I just love that. I love that there's this interactive spot in the middle, and there's also my spot. And my spot can't be messed with. The middle can be, and I gotta really think about those things. I would say the least good part about that game is the deck building part, because it's just there. But yeah, I don't know. I just love everything about it. It's Other than so that's the one thing. There's room for what I realized was, because Puerto Rico used to be my favorite game. This is my favorite game. What I realized is there's room to move up now, because this game has almost like it's 5% thematic. It feels that road totally makes sense, and that is about the only thing in the game that I think has not just been pasted on. You could just take everything, put it someplace else, and it would be just, another game. And I think there's room for someone to knock that off my top spot if they actually integrate theme well into the mechanics of the game. And I don't if the cover with the 3 faces that are painted and in black and white or whatever, oh god, that cover's so bad. If the cover, the original cover of Great Western Trail is any indication, there's definitely room for improvement. So I'm waiting for the improvement.
I want to go on now and talk about you as a designer. So when did you first realize that you could do it?
2012. Before then, I had no reference for what things were, and I don't think there was really you could go onto forums for like game design, but there wasn't a lot of information out there for board game design. And then somewhere around 2012, because I had made Viva Java, and people were playing it, and it was a huge risk for me. It was like 8 players. I'd play multiple games, play test this game that had 8 players. Once I realized that was working, and I was starting to work on other games, and the ideas were just flowing. Yeah, I was like, oh, this could be a thing. This could actually be a thing.
And so it was, I think a lot of people draw conclusions about their own worth, whichever art form they choose to do, before they get recognition. But was it the feedback from the players after you published a game that made you think, oh yes, okay, now I'm onto something?
If I went by the feedback, I think I would probably have given up, because most of the feedback from that, I just remember that time, and people were just confused, and I think they still are. There's not been a game like Viva Java that has come out on the market since then. It's a game where you have to build up your own stuff, but you literally are on a different team every single round of the game, and it just doesn't exist. That game just doesn't exist. It's exists in its own little world that I thought people might start gravitating towards this sort of design space, but I think it's just hard to design games like that, so people haven't. So I don't know. I sort of lost the point of the question, but to that, I really don't know if I would listen to people. It's more that I knew that after that, because of the ideas I was getting and because of the knowledge that I gained from that, and the fact that I had demystified the whole thing. Because I think a lot of people think at first, oh, how am I supposed to compete? How am I supposed to do this stuff? Because it's I don't have any knowledge. But I think just being creative and trying to do something, the barrier for entry for making a board game is pretty low. And then once you've gotten past that hump of doing the first one, and you start doing the other ones, if you can continue that momentum, you just get better and better. You don't get worse over time. At least I would hope you don't. But you learn the craft, and once the only way for me to learn the craft at the time was to just continuously do it. Nowadays, honestly, it's in my day, but nowadays, literally, there are resources out there. You can get a jump start and be at my level of game design and not feel like an aspiring game designer within 2 years. You could literally feel that way. I think that's crazy. I think it's super good. It's so much better now for doing this.
So your first designs then, as you mentioned, you mentioned Viva Java. They were published by Chris at Dice Hate Me. How did you two meet?
We met at Origins in 2011, and I was not going to Origins until like 2 days beforehand, when I got an email from one of my friends, John Moeller, who was like, "Do you want to come along? I've got a hotel room at Origins." I only know John. I've only met John at that point like twice, and I just said, "Oh yeah, sure." I don't know. I mean, I guess that's just basically the story of anyone going to any convention for the first time is, sure, just saying yes to some weird situation that you probably should say no to, but I did anyway. And we went there, and I think it was like the first night I was there. We stayed up and played games until like 4 a.m. And then there was like this sort of like design group that turned into, what is that company? The company that made, wow, I'm just like, Daily Magic. There we go. Daily Magic Games. At the time it was a different name of a company, and they had just put out Alien Frontiers. And man, my brain, like, now it feels like, so I'm pulling up memories from nowhere at this point. Like, it's been so long since these things have happened. But we all had this group of people, played games. We talked about game design, and I was just like, this is amazing. And so I just remember staying up till like 4 a.m. playing Trois with Chris, and then, yeah, we were fast friends after that. He played my game Viva Java, and then decided within the next 2 weeks to publish it. And then since then, we've just hung out and been around. And, now I'm living here in North Carolina at his house. Yeah, it's been great.
And so you talk about, when you talk about design, that you have a sort of central idea of positive player interaction. What does that mean?
Earnest, neckbeard type stuff. No, it's like if you are playing a game and you have a collaborative space, that is what I like. So that means it's a competitive game, but there are going to be times where your actions have a distinct overlap with other people. So my action that I take on my turn is going to benefit someone else. It could hurt someone as well, and that's usually the balance. But I can't independently do a thing without it potentially affecting other players' decisions. I know that sounds a little bit like hogwash, because that happens in almost every game. But what I really like is when those things are intertwined so heavily that you really do have to make considerations as to what is your best worst move. Sometimes I want to take this action because it's good for me. I know it's going to help this person as well, but it's my best action. And I love that, and I know that this other person is going to help me if I do that, so I can do that. That's why I liked Puerto Rico initially. It's like, I love the fact that I had mini turns. I love the fact that I picked a role. I did it. Everyone else got to do it. And it felt very solid. It felt very like, ooh, we are making a communal game. We are actually actively involved as much as possible. And that's really the thing, is engagement. Positive player interaction is an interaction in a space that is normally negative. You normally just throw a card at someone and punch them in the face. And in this, you're like, I'm going to play this card. It's going to help me. I'll help you as well, unfortunately. But if we work together, we can maybe make something happen here. I like the table talk it encourages. I like the meta it encourages. And I think games in general need to have more elements above the table than what they currently do. I think a lot of these Euro games that are extremely heavy, one thing they are missing is that above the table, oh, what is that person going to do and how is that going to affect me thing? And that's not about just taking a spot that someone wants. Like, that's about like, this inherent economic system affects me and you in this way, and I want to promote it. Yeah, I don't know. But yeah, that's a long answer for, I like whenever we can talk and work together, even if we're going to punch each other in the face then later.
And so we were talking before we hit the record button, and you were telling me how you're trying to embrace sincerity more because you are unfortunately born into Generation X, and that means we have to be ironic about everything.
Yeah, unfortunately.
But you push forward this deeply ironic picture of you being a sort of a genius and a titan of the board game industry. Mm-hmm. I mean, to what degree does that reflect your real view of your work, though?
If everyone could see my work through my eyes, they would just adore it.
I'd be a lot richer than I am.
Yeah, exactly. And I always think about that. Some people say, like, if everyone in the world was not, like, if everyone in the world was you, oh, well, the world would just be boring and terrible. It's like, no, if everybody in the world was me, it would be much better. It'd be much better.
I mean, if everyone in the world was me, it'd be a hell of a lot angrier. And that's saying something, considering the state of the world.
No, I will never have that. It's never going to be gone, right? I will always have the honest truth is that a lot of people have that sort of imposter syndrome. And I do when it comes to social anxiety. But if you were to ask me how I feel about myself, I have a very positive self-image. I believe in my abilities. I believe in myself. And I think that I can do it. And when confronted with a task that's monumental, I can start chipping away at it. And that's like a really good quality for something that when you are learning more about yourself and how you're going to express yourself through art or whatever creative endeavor you do, it's like, if you can figure out where's your upper limit, like how far can you go? And mine generally, I will put myself into situations that are bad because of how high the self-esteem is. But I also make fun of that too, because one of the things that I was lampoon it a lot is because I see other people doing this stuff and saying stuff about themselves that is completely, what's the word? Unself-aware. And when they do it and they don't have any sort of humor to it, it's like, what are you doing? Like, how can you possibly walk into a room and be like, hey, everyone, I know I'm the smartest person in the room, but let me level with you. Like, if someone earnestly believes that, I don't want to listen to them. Because I have no interest in that, right? But for me, it's like, if you act like that every now and then as a joke, it's good. And honestly, early, it helped me out a lot because people weren't used to that. Especially in the board game space. For some reason, people are very quiet in board games. And even reviews, the way that the shows that people make, the things that people do, they're very engineering about things. It's unsurprisingly, I guess, but they don't think about how entertainment could potentially propel them past the point of here's my analytical review of this thing. They just focus on here's my analytical review of this thing, and here's the way that my show has always worked. And I feel like that is a huge missed opportunity. Anyway, that goes off to the side. Whatever. I think highly of myself, if I would be honest.
So your next game then is Sylvian. Why should we play the Omniverse games?
You should play them because I don't know how to say his name correctly, so I'll just butcher it. Shady Torby is the designer of all these different Omniverse games. And I think they are just really good systems design from a space that I don't necessarily design in. I guess that's a good spot to think. I'm not good at making puzzles. I like interactive puzzles and making a game and stuff. I'm not good at making puzzles myself. And when I see some of the mechanics that are used in the Omniverse games with, drawing cards, figuring out how this works, I'm going to draw these cards, but some of them are bad. I'm going to be trying to open these. I'm thinking of the original, what is it, Onirum. And in that game, it's just got this weird economy of not wanting to draw cards, but needing to draw cards, pressing your luck. And it's these weird numbers games where I don't necessarily understand why they even get to the point in this design where they were thinking like drawing cards and opening doors makes sense. That I think is so mystical about them. It's like in Sylveon, I believe I picked that one just because I haven't gotten a chance to really dig into it yet. And I feel like if I'm going to have a game in a cabin and I'm going to have like all this time, this is something I want to dig into. And it's sort of tower defense, but it also deals with the ecological burning forest stuff. So maybe I can think about how the world's burning and then I'm also burning the world. I think it would be a good, game for Doomsday. I think, but I think it's those systems, systems that I don't understand. That like how did they even come up with the concept of certain card draws and how the special abilities come into play? Like why is the grid set up the way it is, and how did they figure out the numbers for what cards come in, and how did they even begin this design? Where do you come from? It feels very abstract, and I don't know. Those things are magical to me. So I think simple card games that really, in this case, just reflect like some sort of design sensibility that I just do not have. They really impress me. But either way, they're just super fun to play. I don't know. They've got and there's a lot of little mini expansions that come in the box. So yeah, I could just be playing this for I could play it 20 times in a row and be playing a different game each time. And I think that's perfect for something that you're going to be spending a lot of time playing.
And so how much do you like whimsy in your games?
I guess it depends on the whimsy. Do you think the Oniverse games are whimsical?
They seem to be whimsical to me, living in this dream world, but it's a sort of and the danger is very safe and very unthreatening, and that strikes me as a sort of whimsical quality. Yeah,
and I think there's something about the Oniverse that gets for me moves it away from the whimsicality of say if someone says, "Hey, do you want to play an Alice in Wonderland game?" I'm pretty meh, please no, God no. So if the whimsical is generic fantasy, I always hate that too. And I'm trying to think of what is it about whimsical that gets me? Oh, that the other thing that I don't like is the games that have kid-based themes that are trying to be grown-up games nowadays. You've seen this a few times. I think, and this is not, I'm sure Fort is a good game, but it has zero thematic appeal to me because of the kid theme. It's like kids playing on a playground. I'm that feels just very whimsical. I am imagining that I'm a warrior. I'm imagining that I'm these things, but I'm also playing a game about imagining that I'm also playing a game about imagining. And I'm just that sort of whimsy, I don't get. But what was that game? Oh no, I'm gonna lose it. There was a game that I thought was amazing. Oh, Lucky's Misadventures. And they used the world of Oz, and it is a whimsical game, but it's so off the wall and crazy. I think games like Cosmic Frog and stuff like this sort of fall in that category where I don't think they're whimsical anymore. They're just weird, and I'm good with weird. And I feel Oniverse goes to Weird Town, whereas something I'm trying to think of what is a generic fantasy game?
Descent.
Descent, yeah, they're perfect.
As generic as you like.
Yeah, Terranoth. That is the most generic name I've ever heard for a place. So yeah, that sort of mentality there, that feels it's not whimsical, but it feels that way. It feels like it's trying to be a family-friendly version of a thing that isn't family-friendly. I hate that stuff. I hate it so much. I hate family-friendly versions of things. I'm an adult. I want to play adult games. And they don't even have to be adult themed. Just get away from that silliness. Silly. Too silly.
So I want to talk to you now about your other work inside the industry rather than your just pure design. So what do you do at Renegade Games, and how did you get the job?
So I got the job because behind the scenes, I tend to I talk to a lot of people behind the scenes, right? I guess people didn't realize that like when I first started off, I did the podcasting, but I set up for a show called Something from Nothing. I set up getting all the guests. And so I would just talk to people from the industry every few days. It was pretty crazy because I have social anxiety like crazy, but I pushed myself to do this because I really wanted to know the thoughts of every designer. I wanted to know everyone. I had this 100-person list and I got through the whole list. So I had contacted everybody. So when you're saying how'd you get the job at Renegade? Well, it just so happened that they had they were interested in my father's work. They had seen that I was working with Artana as a freelance game developer, and they were at an unpub, and so they were looking for people to start doing some more development for them as they grew, and just me, Daryl Lauder, who was at the time the president of Unpub, and knowing Scott Gata and stuff, it just kind of gelled. And then, I started I think we talked about the job on January 1st, and I started on the 3rd of January, something like that. Something weird like that happened. And so that's how that was. The work at Renegade, I've just been doing development work for them. So I started with Christopher Chung's game, Spell Smashers. And then from then, I've been just doing all kinds of things. Terror Below, I've worked with Scott Alms a few times now. Warp's Edge, I really love that game. I'm so glad that I got a chance to work on that one because I think one of the cool things about working as a developer and not just a game designer is you get to take something that someone else did, try to understand their mentality and make changes to make that game better. And I feel like Scott Alms is one of those designers that me, I'll get a game design and I'll get it to 99% before sending it to a publisher. And I think Scott knowingly gets it to about 70%, something like that. And if you've ever seen Scott Alms games, he's got a lot out. They're varying quality, and it's literally because the development of the game from the side of the publisher, it varies. And so if you see a game that comes out and it's bad by Scott Alms, I'm not blaming Scott Alms. It's not his fault that his baseline, which was probably solid, turned into whatever they put out. So I don't know. If you look at Scott Alms' lower ranked games, you can probably tell which and you're a designer, you probably figure out from those which publishers you would probably want to work with if you have games that you want to develop into something amazing. And that's the thing. Every designer's a little different, but that's what I've been doing with Renegade. It's just that, and that's how I got a chance to do a G.I. Joe deck builder game, and I now work full time with them. And I've just been doing a lot of intellectual properties. I never thought I'd be working on Hasbro games and not working for Hasbro.
And I mean, so you mentioned being a developer and working with designers. I mean, what is I guess my question is, how do you change someone's baby without putting their nose out of joint?
I think the best answer is you will always do that. There's no way to avoid it. I think the best way is to jump in and start doing what you do every single time. And if that designer gives pushback and doesn't understand the process or does those things, unfortunately, I've had some projects that I've worked on where I'm sorry, but those designers that had issues with me, you don't really talk about those games very much, right? That game came out, but you don't really hear too much about it. And that is really the issue, right? Like if you're not willing to work with me, there's going to be problems because I can't really change the way that I work with Renegade. Is that I'm working directly with the designer and I'm working directly with them. So if you want the best game possible, it's probably good to listen to a good developer. If you want your game to be like what you wanted, but not profitable, totally fine. We could just keep it the way it is, and then we're good. And I don't think it works the same way every time. I think there are certain games that are just going to be more alluring. I think Warp's Edge has a nice theme to it. On top of it, Terror Below had a nice theme. Whereas something like I love Matt and Ben, but like they make card games that have numbers on them. They have a specific amount of selling quality. I could have spent a year developing those games, but they were already like fantastic whenever I'd played them. So it's like, if you want a fantastic numbers game, play Stellar or Subastral, but they're never going to blow up the market, at least in my opinion. Like I potentially, like there's this weird chance that like all of a sudden they will, but like, no, those games are really solid. It's just like, you got to buy them and you're not going to get like the hype. You're not going to get
Pete Mats should be the bird game in my view.
Yeah, there you go. Pete Mats should be the bird game. And that's the thing, right? Like those games, all three of Pete Mats, Stellar, and Subastral, all of those games are fantastic games. They just don't get much play because, And that's the thing on Board Game Geek, too. If you go onto Board Game Geek and you see someone go like this, they will go, "This is the best card game I have ever played. It is phenomenal. 7 out of 10. Like there is this sense that like it is not complex enough to be highly rated on Board Game Geek. Therefore, even if it is the best possible thing it could be, it will get a 7 out of 10 no matter what. So that unfortunately is the what's going to happen with those smaller card games, unless you do something really wild that just like explodes like the mind.
So your next game then is Zendo. How innovative is Zendo?
Zendo is so innovative, no one has really followed up and ever done it again. Does that make sense? Yes, I think that makes sense. Zendo is one of those games that this is Corey Heath. Yeah, I think that's his name, right? And I got to talk to him a while back, and he's an interesting designer because he's very much of they're German. I want to make German games, but they're just not sellable anymore. But he made this game, and it took him a long time to make it, and it's such a strange, straightforward game. I don't know if I'm going to explain this one just because it's easy to explain, but it's like I don't know if a lot of people have played it. But there used to be these things called little plastic pyramids. I can't even remember what they had, but Looney Labs made these little plastic pyramids, and you could buy a bundle of them in a box that said Zendo at one point. But Zendo is a game that you could play with these abstract pieces, and you can play it with pretty much any abstract pieces, whatever, as long as everybody has access to them. And the idea of the game is you have a rule. So in this case, it would say all small pyramids are standing straight up. That's the rule. That's it. So you'd have these small, medium, and large pyramids. And what you would do is the person who is the judge who made up the rule sets up an example in front of them with those pieces. So like maybe they just put 2 triangles or 2 of those pyramids and have them facing up. And they put a little a white stone to say this is correct. And then they just lay the 2 down to the side, and they put a black stone, and that is incorrect. And then everyone at the table then recreates a guess as to will it be correct based on what they saw from the original like prompt, right?
They're thinking, oh, a red pyramid on the left is correct.
Yeah, exactly. So they're like, okay, so red, as long as there's one red pyramid. So I'm going to put one red pyramid here, and then I'm going to put like a pile of them. It doesn't matter what order. And then the next person grabs some pieces, and you're all doing this at the same time. So you just grab pieces and you put them together. One person just puts one triangle and lays it down, and it's like, this is wild, but maybe one triangle to the side is fine, And then you just go around, and then once everybody's made their little diorama or whatever, the judge says yes and puts a white dot by someone or a black stone by someone if it's wrong. And you just keep playing this until you say, I would like to guess what the rule is. And they guess out loud what the rule is. If they're wrong, the game continues. If they're right, yay, you win, and you become the new person. And it's just a really fun thing. And what's so good about it is the simplest rules. Like I said, like that is probably a very hard guess. Like that is a hard one, because even though I could literally try to get you to guess it as fast as possible, like with just those small pyramids facing upwards, like there's so many possibilities. Like what it could be that there are no large pyramids could be the thing.
I guess no one's thinking, oh, it's that simple, right?
Yeah, well, I mean, that's the thing, though. Even if you are thinking it's simple, there's so many, like, because of the wildness of the world, there's so many things that you can do. The only rule, the cool thing about that game, too, is the only rule is you can't use landmarks in real world. It's got to exist in this, like, space. So you can't be like, they're all pointing north. That's illegal. But I really like that simplicity, and it's just that guessing. Just it's collaborative puzzle making, but it feels magical because the thing's not that complex. You know the rule's not that complex. You just cannot fathom what it could possibly be when you get something wrong, and you're like looking at the thing. This is exactly the same. Like, why is it wrong? Yeah, it's great. It's a great game.
And so I remember listening to you on a podcast once, bemoaning bidding in games and saying that bidding is a sign of laziness on the part of designers. They put it in to just generate excitement in a game. I mean, what are your feelings about deduction in games?
Deduction? But I like deduction. So I don't like bidding, but I like betting, which I think is different, right? So if you bet on a thing and you don't know the outcome, I think being able to manipulate that and also bet, that feels good. But deduction, I love the social deduction games. It's not. There's some that I have fallen away from. Like I've played so much of games that are either. Oh God, why am I'm losing it. The granddaddy of them all, the one that started the whole like thing.
The Resistance or Werewolf?
The Resistance. There we go. The Resistance. Yeah, the Resistance is one that I've played that or similar versions of so many times that I could probably just throw that off in the side. Right. I don't need to see that again. But I love these games where somebody is potentially either a traitor, but usually just has a different goal than what you do. Even that game Nemesis, which is not for me. It's very much you get onto an alien ship and you're playing this very thematic game, which I love the theme, but I don't like how it just tears you down and then the game just pummels you. But reducing your options every turn. Like that's a game where instead of hurting you but allowing you more options, it hurts you, which takes away your options. I do not like pain in my board games. But like what I love about that game is the end goals. Everybody's got these end goals that are really like tangible goals that overlap with other people's strategies. So perhaps I need to throw you out, make sure you're dead, and then get us to Mars, And so you don't know that, but you need to get to Mars and you need to get this other person out. So we're like, we're all sync, like I'm trying to work with you because we need to get to Mars. And then at the last second, I need to betray you to win. That's interesting. And those are interesting overlaps for like social deduction. I think there's a lot of space for cool social deduction, even in more complex games. I really like it. I'm not saying it has to be like the be all and end all, but yeah, I'm into it. And also deduction, not even social deduction, just deduction in general. I love, my favorite type of deduction is something that's like a Sherlock Holmes consulting detective, where the deduction requires intuition as well. You have to jump through the hoop. You have to get the gap, because it's not going to tell. It's going to tell you this happened and this happened, and it's not going to tell you the in between. You have to make that gap. I love that kind of stuff too.
So I want to talk to you now about, because I played it at the weekend and I'm kind of obsessed with this game now. It's My Father's Work. And so where did you get the idea for this game?
I think let's do it. Yeah. So Young Frankenstein is the main. Yeah, Young Frankenstein is the main starting point for everything. I've always been a fan of horror games. I have wanted to make a horror game forever, but I didn't know exactly how to fit it into what I like as far as board games go. Like, because I have played, or at least I've played several Mad Scientist games that are all fun games in their own right, but they miss the mark when it comes to the Mad Scientist. When we're talking about whimsical and wacky, Mad Scientist games are all whimsical and wacky, with the one exception, which this My Father's Work gets compared to all the time, and that's Abomination. Which it's funny because like Dan Blanchett is also a developer at Renegade Games, and he wrote some passages in My Father's Work. And it's interesting that we have that overlap, that he's worked on that game, and then he did some development on My Father's Work, and the game, the concept of it was, I do not want to do the same thing again, where it's whimsical, where it's not trying to play it straight. One of the things that I used to appreciate Young Frankenstein more than I did like the movie. I appreciated it when I was growing up because I didn't find it very funny, but I appreciated it because it tried so hard to be Frankenstein.
Well, I mean, we're all allowed to be wildly wrong.
Exactly.
Sometimes.
But that's the thing. Sometimes we learn over time. And so over time, my appreciation for Young Frankenstein turned into a love for Young Frankenstein. I recognized what they were doing and what it was funny and how it was working. And I think as a kid, I just saw it as, it's a boring black and white movie. And that sort of switch carries over into My Father's Work and how I feel about the game itself. I think there's a lot of people, that even people who generously backed the game, who might have come into it thinking, either I'm going to get like this whimsical, mad scientist thing, and I want that. Or, and this was one thing, this was somebody's comment typified this perfectly. And it was, I wanted the voice acting to be more wild and crazy. I wanted the person to be like, welcome to my father's work. I walked back into my laboratory and blah, blah, blah. Right? And,
well, I tried and you wouldn't let me.
Yeah, I know. You tried. And here's the thing, right? This is not on I'll even do the apology here, because I think, honestly, this is not how I intended any of this. I wanted you to do this voice, but it is not, if anyone out there is like, I am critical of Ben Maddox's performance here, what I want to say is this was done fast. It was done not in the scenario that I would approve of as a designer. And if I had more time and could do this stuff with more money, we would have done a very specific set of things. So as much as I really appreciate your work and your performance on this, those are things that like are outside of your control, and they're outside of my control as well. So those are the kinds of things that we're working against. I hope in the future to grab you again, and so that we can do more. We can dig into it a little bit deeper. And I would hope that you would want us to continue doing it. That's up to you. But all I'm saying is, I did not realize at the time how much would be thrust upon me to make sure that things happen, right? So, but to that thing, right? That person that was looking for that gruff, I want my masterwork, it's over here. They basically wanted stupid. They wanted something dumb. They wanted to just play a game where it had 10 seconds of voice acting between every round that just said something crazy and weird, and then the text would say, like, pick up a piece and do this thing. They wanted to play that game because that's what they're used to, you know? And when someone confronts you with a game where, oh, this is actually trying, like, this is doing it, and this is not whether or not it succeeds or doesn't. It's the fact that it is legitimately knows what it knows what it wants to be, and it tries to do that. And when people come in, they might just bounce right off because they're just not prepared for text. They're not prepared for Victorian language. They're not prepared for, I don't know what to call it, something a little bit. You gotta just be in it. You gotta know that, like, it's gonna take the time it takes to play. And if you're not ready for that and you just want to play it in an hour, it's just not gonna work for you. I don't know.
and so, how long was the design and development process on this game?
Forever. It was a long time. This was, I think I was trying to calculate it. It's either 6 or 7 years. And I think some people say, when they say 6 years, they usually mean like, well, I made the game 6 years ago and then I shopped around to publishers and I did all those things and, you know, whatever. This is 6 years and the publisher was interested on the second playtest. So I had within about 6 months of the very first playtest, which wasn't really, I wouldn't even call that a playtest, but we did. I really appreciate that for somebody because they sat down for like 7 hours playing this ridiculous first version. But I learned all the lessons I needed from it and was able to get it in front of a publisher then, you know, and that's Skygata and Renegade and stuff. And just having that much interest on the first showing of the game publicly was interesting. So what's great is I never had to pitch the game. It was already there, but still, without pitching the game, knowing that I had a publisher that was interested and was going to publish the game, it still took 6 years of labor. And the last 2 years are so painful that I don't know if I ever want to do something like that ever again. I've never written a novel. You know, it's like I'm technically a trained writer. Like, technically, I guess, is in my 4 years of college was for creative writing and writing in English and stuff. But I've never written a novel. I've never written anything more than just a short story. And having to basically write 3 individual novels, while also designing the mechanics around it and figuring out what I wanted to do. I mean, that's part of it too. It's just like those first 3 years is just coming up with the concepts and implementing those and seeing how wild I could go and testing the boundaries of the system. And then trying to hone it was like whatever. But then combine that with like the last 2 years of just writing. For a lot of people I don't know, for someone who I feel like amazing after looking back at it, because I think a lot of people have taken, it might even take like 20 years for someone to write a novel. It's like your first novel is really tough. So for me to be able to write like 3 of these scenarios with the amount of text that's there, I mean, we're talking like I think in the end it was like 180,000 words total. Like, that's a lot. That's a lot on one person. That's a lot even for 2 years. So to have that on top of a game, I mean, that's insane. And it was really tough. And it took longer than I ever thought. You know, I would plan on like 3 months, and then I'd get to the end of the 3 months. I'd be like, I'm not even close. I'd be like, okay, well, another 6 months. I'm not even close. it just kept going, and it just kept going and going. And then this last 6 months was really the worst of all of it. Like, you talk about writing all of it and taking 2 years to write it and then revising. I forget to even say that. It's like I wrote it and then revised the whole thing from the ground up at one point. So I rewrote the whole thing. But you get to the end of like that, and then you have to take all of that stuff which has been written and coded, and someone else takes that stuff and is trying to create like a program around it. And these last 6 months have just been so frustrating because all of that work, I had already done all that work, and now I have to do it all over again because someone else has this code and is seeing it for the first time. And even though it works, their system, whatever they're creating, may not work with it so as well. So it's like, now I've got to, since I'm the only one that knows everything that's in this game, I have to be the one on point to double check and revise all this stuff. So yeah, that was just brutal. This has taken years off my life, and it's just been a brutal process. And I'm probably too hard on myself for all of it. But like, yeah, and you probably like, we were talking about earnestness, right? And me being more earnest. A lot of this has to do with this stuff. Like after a while, it's like I got to the point where I'm like crying every day trying to get this done. It's like, how can I not change my personality a little bit after all of this? It sucks. It sucked. It was really rough for a long period of time.
And so you have this very successful Kickstarter campaign, and then you have the tricky time where the game gets delivered to backers, but the app isn't ready, and so you've got people maybe playing the game on some janky old version of the app that somehow is on the internet and shouldn't be, and all of that sort of stuff. But now, the app is out, the game is out, and people criticizing my voice work aside, people are saying very nice things about it. And I released a podcast, as we were recording this, I released a podcast the day before, in which I found myself to be relieved that I liked the game so much. The reason being that is, I listened to you on the State of Games talking about it for years, and then it's a game I always thought that was very interesting. And then, I got to work on the game and was hoping that I wouldn't be attached to this huge white elephant. I mean, and then when I play it, I think, oh no, this is actually fantastic. I mean, to what degree do you feel vindicated, or are you just too exhausted for that?
I'm a little too exhausted at the moment, honestly. I'm just so depressed and sad about things. So it's like it's hard for me to even like enjoy. I enjoy hearing people talk about it, and the praise and all that stuff, and it's like it's great and all, but like I think it pushed me past the point of like where I'm normally comfortable with things. So it's like I got to repair myself a little bit before I can start to enjoy this. I know that's not really the right answer, but like it's the real answer. And honestly, it's like that doesn't take away from the fact that I appreciate everybody and all the kind words they've said behind the scenes and stuff. It kind of just keeps me going. And honestly, I feel conflicted because whenever I say bad things or, feel down about this stuff, is like I had a lot of people would do something similar to this and they might not get any praise or any end result like this. And I think this was really, this is really good. And I'm glad that people enjoy it and they're having a good time. I feel like eventually I'll be able to be better. I just, it's a little too close to it. And then, we're already talking about stuff for the future. And I feel like it just never ends. It's inescapable. So yeah, I really do, but I think overall, I really appreciate everything. I think some of the things for me is it's so weird to see, when you've worked on something this long. And it's like, I totally get it. Like, it doesn't matter, right? I'm glad people are just talking about it and doing those things. But like when my headspace is to compare it to other things, which I shouldn't do. And when I see games that come out also, and I'm like, that game right there, that is just a game that came out this year. And it's got Board Game Geek is like giving it like 9, and they're just like pushing it to the top. And I'm just like, did I do something wrong? Like, what did I do that was incorrect here? Like, how did I fuck this up? That it's not like a slam dunk. Like, why is it not a slam dunk for people? And I didn't expect it to be as divisive as what it is. Some people are just like very. I've never seen as many 1s or 2s as I've gotten on this game, which is insane because it's just a medium weight Euro game with a mad scientist theme. It's more than that. It's expansive and all that, but like, what happened to some people? Like, what happened to them over their life that got them to this point? Like, this game is a 1. How dare he make this game?
And so people have been trying to sort of cause controversy with this game to some degree because on the final page of the rulebook you write a discourse on xenophobia, where you kind of to some degree throw writers of the 19th century under the bus. Mm-hmm. Why write that mea culpa in the back of the book?
Oh, in the rulebook, it's important. I mean, these are things that it's like when we look at writers from this time period. I mean, it's important to note that they're assholes. Like they were. I mean, they literally did these things because they knew that stoking fear was a popular thing at the time, and it's just like now. But at the same time, like, they didn't understand fully the ramifications of the thing that they were doing. They just mistakenly did it. I think it's like haphazard. So when you see these, I don't know, I can't remember what the book's name was, but there was like this travel blog that this lady wrote about like Hispanics. She's like extremely white, and the thing blew up because she's extremely white and wrote it from this perspective of somebody like who is Hispanic and having like a travel log, and it just doesn't make any sense to people. I think like when people have the best, I don't look at those things like xenophobic problems as erasure, right? I don't look at H.P. Lovecraft and say everything he has done is the worst because he had a cat that he named the N-word. I look at it as he was over the top racist for the time, but he has a lot of fears and anxieties that resonate with people because of that. And I think his work recognizes his work being from someone that is that xenophobic and racist, at least during his life, helps you understand like why these things work, why this psychological profile works. And I think the same thing happens for Frankenstein, which I pulled a lot of stuff from this. It's like Frankenstein has this Frankenstein and Bram Stoker's Dracula especially. Bram Stoker's Dracula is like all about that, right? Like he has no clue what, like, I don't even think he's taken I don't even think, what's his name? Bram Stoker has left London at that point in his life. So he has literally zero clue what this is, and he's just making it up off the top of his head.
Well, he's Irish, so I assume he wasn't born in London, but nevertheless, I will defer to your American lack of knowledge about Europe. You're not unique.
I just said the dumbest thing ever. I think just everyone, but yeah, you know how everyone in the UK is from London,
right?
So yeah, perfect. Okay, cool. I just wanted to make sure everyone knew everyone's from London. But whatever, Bram Stoker may have gone on a thing. He may have done whatever. But all I know from what has been written is that like he used this one book that was like a book that he could get from the library as a lot of his historical stuff, and you could see any of the inconsistencies he put into Dracula is reflected in the inconsistencies of the research that he had. And it's great to see someone trying to research an area and doing all that stuff, but it's like that area is not represented in any way like the area actually is. And it's like, that's sort of like, I don't know, whatever. A long answer is, I think it's important to recognize that like older writers, there's some blind spots there. They filled it in with potentially inflammatory material when they didn't need to do that. And I think nowadays we can recognize that as like, yeah, like literally you shouldn't go to Transylvania expecting Dracula to be around the corner. Like it's kind of this nice little area. It's got like cottages and stuff. And if you go to Transylvania, you can get like a tour of Dracula's castle or Vlad's castle and stuff. I mean, these things happen. Vlad existed at one point and all that stuff did. And the stuff that I talk about in the game happened too, like with like the Austro-Hungarian Empire and a lot more that I've forgotten. But it doesn't, I'm making it up. You shouldn't take it as like gospel. I don't know. I think that's just the point of it. It's just like, hey, we were talking about earnestness. I'm much more earnest than I used to be. But I also believe that these things are important. Like, yeah, we should talk about that stuff. You don't have to hate it, though. No reason to hate it.
So your next game, then, is Yinch. Is this the best abstract?
Yeah, it is. So Yinch is the best abstract game that's ever been created. And it's very simple. It's a game where you get 5 in a row. And then you remove those pieces from the board. The twist to it is that when you start the game with 5 rings on the board, and when you place a piece by moving the ring to a new spot on the board, and wherever you land, you put your circular piece there in either the color of white or black, and when you move, and then later, as the board's getting filled in with these white and black pieces, it sort of works like Reversi or Othello, where if you make a move, you will move your ring to a new spot, jumping over pieces, and as you jump over those pieces, you'll flip the pieces in the way in that specific line, and then drop your new piece wherever your ring lands. What's interesting about it is that when you make 5 in a row of either black or white, you remove them from the board, which changes the board state for sure, but it also requires you to remove one of your rings. So when you can remove 3 of your rings from the game, you win, but you start with only 5. So every time you remove a ring, you become less effective in your maneuvering on the board. And it's that inherent sort of catch-up mechanic and that strategy as to when you will delay taking pieces or be aggressive that makes that game just so acute and simple and yet so deep and complex in a way that like Go is not, right? People talk about the complexity of Go and they say like it is like one of the most deep games ever, and I'm like, yeah, because it's got faux depth. It's like I can make a game that's deeper than Go. I'll just put it on a grid that's 100 by 100 dots. Now it's deeper. Like, look at how much depth that has. And it's like, you can place a piece anywhere. It's like, that's faux depth to me. That's like, no, there's still spots on the board that are better to place than that, if you understood how the Go board works. So I look at like Yinch and say, yeah, there's some starting moves that are going to be better than others, but it's all about that tactical push and pull, forcing. You can even do moves that force the other player to remove a ring if you get to that level. And it's just that level of depth and complexity and back and forth and understanding the board state and how to manipulate it. I'm not even at that level, but I think for a game that I wanted to play over and over and over and over again, I could potentially get to that level, and that would be amazing. That would be so good. But yeah, I really think it's, if not the best, it is one of the best abstract games, and to me, it's the best abstract game.
And so, can we expect to see a TC Petty abstract anytime in the future?
I tried. I made a game about, like, because I really like the GIF series of games. I made a game like that with simple rules and moving. And, honestly, maybe, but we'll see. I had a phase where I was designing games like that. I'm sort of out of that phase now. So you'll probably see a lot more thematic games, theme and mechanics working together, than you would see abstract games. But I'm not counting it out. I like abstract. You'll see more games with cards with numbers from me. That's for sure.
So I want to talk now about the future. So what do you have coming out in the sort of short to medium term?
I don't know. It's weird. I've had some games just on the back burner for so long that they've just been bouncing from one outfit to another. Unfortunately, that's just kind of what happens. Like, you can sign a game and then it just doesn't come out. So I've had Clubs In and Don't Get Eated get out there to like 3 different companies. I've had a game that I was working on, a series of games that are based on European cities, which I hope comes out because I have a really strong thematic push for those. And I would love to make a trilogy of European city games. And they're complex European, like medium to heavy European games in a series. And I would love to see that happen. It's just that, I keep getting them back. But what can I say? So what does the future look like for me? Well, it just looks like more games. I mean, you've got G.I. Joe. You've got more G.I. Joe stuff coming from me. Not that that's like the main feast. But I'd love to have these Euro games come out. It's weird. You would think that people would be like, oh, look, you've got this game that just came out that's like really popular. Like, wouldn't you want to like follow that up with something? And it's like, yeah, I would. I'd love to. Love to be working with people right now that wanted to follow that up. We'd be rapid fire right there, and I had that all planned out, but didn't work out.
And so, you mentioned 3 there. I can think of other games that you haven't had published yet. So, for instance, your punk game.
Yeah.
And I mean, so how hard is it to get something published? And do you think My Father's Work will have ramifications on your ability to get stuff made?
I honestly don't think it'll have as much as some people might think, right? They might go, oh, I've never... Because I was always confused. I read some reviews of people saying, seeing My Father's Work and going like, well, never heard of this designer. Like, how could he have... How can I trust this design is going to be good? And I was like, oh, that's so weird, just from my perspective, having designed so many games in the last few years and done so much development, like to think of myself as somebody who has not put out any games. I think it is way easier if you have the ability to pitch and it just depends on the games that you're putting out, right? Like, I mean, I'm not going to down anybody. I know several people like Brett Gilbert, Matthew Dunstan, Daryl Andrews, John Gilmore. All of those guys, they work with other people and they have a swath of games. So they could sit down with a publisher and they can say, what are you looking for? Do you want like a dice placement game? Oh, I got a dice placement game. Oh, what are you looking for? I've got like this bidding game. Okay, bidding game's cool. Here's a bidding game. They can sell 10 games at once to a publisher in this weird rotating conveyor belt of things. And I don't have that. So if you really do want to make a ton of money off of board games, I don't know what the best option is, but you can definitely go the work with other people, do a lot of co-designs, do a lot of games that take 45 to 60 minutes and get those out so that your name is out and about. And I think that's the easiest way to do it. But if you're like me and you're hawking these larger games and you're really not willing to compromise, and because you just want to do the things that you want to do, it's tough. It can be tough. I thought it's much tougher than I thought it would be. I just thought things would just come out. But yeah, you'll just get games back. They won't go out. They will get signed. You'll get a check for $1,000, and then it will come right back to you 2 years later.
And so, on that then, and, coming off the back of 2 years of apparent hell getting My Father's Work out, I mean, how optimistic are you for your future in the industry?
Oh, well, I'm very optimistic. I don't think I think there's room for someone like me, in this industry. And whether or not, I look at it as I can go the traditional path of okay, I have a ton of knowledge now, way too much. And I can, if needed, create a new company and have distribution and company networking abilities. I have publisher abilities. I have production. I don't know. I have experience in all of those things. So it's I don't know why I wouldn't be able to do that. So from a standpoint of the only reason I haven't made an attempt to do my own independent thing is because it's a lot of work. It's a lot of stuff I don't like to do. It takes me away from design. I have to line everything up. But that's what I'm saying. It can be anything, right? I can do that, or I can have people work on these games. There's a company that is working with one of my games right now that is very excited to work on it. I don't know if it'll end up actually doing anything, but if that were the case, it'd be the first time that I actually got a chance to just say, yeah, develop it. Go ahead and do this without me. Do the thing and put out a game. I've had this happen multiple times, but every time people try to develop my games, they run into the problem that, I gave you a 99% game and there was a reason why. And they go I'm going to change this. And they're everything else broke because I changed this one thing. I was yeah, that's kind of how that goes. But yeah, no, I look forward and I go it is positive. There is a positive route for me moving forward. I don't have any of those negativity thoughts except for how drained I am currently with where I am. So, yeah, I look forward to the future. It's going to be awesome. I don't know. It just might take a little longer than expected.
So your last game then is another one of these heavy Euros, and this is Terra Mystica. Does this game deserve the renown that it has?
I don't know. I don't know. I think no. Yeah, I think if that's the question, then no. I think the only reason it has that is because it has the generic fantasy theme. Had they just called it I don't know, a European city, random European city, it wouldn't have the renown that it has. I think they picked a theme that resonates with most nerdy people, and then they made a nerdy game. And therefore, those things came together. And so people who would normally look at something like this and scoff at it, they'd be it doesn't have any. I can't fight anyone. Why would I even play this? Why would I play a game that has no dice? They kind of got pulled into it. They got pulled into the world of it, the atmosphere of it, and realized that, wow, not only does it have all these weird, just interesting mechanics, they all kind of work as a whole to create this sort of positive interaction on the center board and a wealth of different options that you can do during the game, along with having variable player powers that are significant and influential enough that you learn each one and play them a little bit differently, but they're not complete. In most cases, they're not complete strategy changers. There are some that are more strong than others, so you kind of have to play to those strengths. But I think the fact that Führerspiel?
Feuerspiele, yeah. Feuerlandspiele.
I'm doing Duolingo for German, and I just was I'm about to say this, and I'm going to get it completely wrong. Feuerspiele. Feuerspiele.
It's Feuerlandspiele.
Feuerlandspiele. Okay, I can do that. So, ich spreche very little Deutsch.
Ich spreche ein bisschen Deutsch.
Ein bisschen Deutsch. Yeah. So, where was I? Anyway, they actually took their some time to look at one of my games during the pandemic too, which was interesting. So I actually showed them a tabletop simulator version of a game, and one of their feedbacks was exactly why I think Gaia Project and Terra Mystica are interesting, is that they really like that variability between factions. They like having a lot of different options, and Terra Mystica just has that in spades. Like, there's just so much in that box. It is way too much, more than I would have expected for a base game for something like that. You would think they would have spread it out over expansions, but no, you get a lot for your money, even though it is an expensive game for Terra Mystica. And I think that's probably why I just love like figuring out what the weaknesses and exploitative aspects of each of the factions is, and just delving into the game again and again. I don't know. It just has a lot of replayability because of that, and it's unique in that space because even though the mechanisms are kind of there, and the moving up on these sort of like tracks to get to the top has been used in several other games, it still works. It works really well, and that solid base is just complemented by these other things. I don't know. I think it's a solid game, but like you said, does it deserve that renown? I think that's only because of the generic fantasy theme.
So I've got one last question for you then. So you're heading out of North Carolina and towards the cabin, and you go around a corner and the back door of the car flies open. 4 of the games fly out down a ravine, into a river, and are swept away to posterity. Which game do you hope is sitting on the back seat of the car?
Oh, Great Western Trail. Definitely Great Western Trail. It's the best. It's so good. I don't understand. I don't know how anyone could not like this game. Other than the fact that if you look at the cover of it, you just want to, take some forks to your eyes. But other than that, like, I think there's a new version. The new version has a different cover. Maybe I should get that, and then people will want to actually play this with me.
So, if people want to get hold of you, they want to see when your stuff is eventually coming out, how can they go about doing that?
They can hit me up at Twitter, Puppy Shogun, Puppy Shogun on Twitter. I'm also the Crippled Werewolf on Board Game Geek, but Twitter's the best way to do it. And then hey, games will come out eventually. It just takes way longer than it should.
Excellent. Well, TC Petty III, thank you very much.
Thank you, Ben Maddox, for having me. This was a great time. I've talked way too much about myself. I feel like I'm just talking and talking and talking and talking. I hope everyone loves it as much as I do.
You can support the show in many ways. You can tell your friends, you can talk about it on social media, you can talk about it in your own blog, podcast or video, or you can support it directly by going to patreon.com/5G4D for a rolling donation, or for a one-off donation hitting the PayPal link at the bottom of the website 5gamesfordoomsday.com. It's these donations that keep the show going. Also, if you want to say something nice about the show, or if you want to say something horrible about the show, you can contact me on Twitter at 5gamesfordoomsday, or send me an email at 5gamesfordoomsday@gmail.com. And if I've managed to gallop on from the monkey's uncle and the ever-increasing temperatures, I'll see you in 2 weeks for another 5 Games for Doomsday. On top of that, he's a former croupier and he co-hosts? Cool, blimey.
Co-host.